Good morning, everyone, and welcome to ABCchat, the very first ABCchat. Thanks so much for giving up your time to join. My name is Richard Taunton. I'm part of the team here at Kaleidoscope. That's the little K over there. And thanks very much for joining something which is new. It is an experiment. And so we're very much looking forward to the next half an hour, but also looking forward to your feedback at the end of it as to whether the whole thing was worth it. ABCchat. What is this thing? What does ABC stand for? ABC, apart but connected. As probably you might have noticed over the last couple of months, our world has changed somewhat. We at Kaleidoscope, we exist to bring people together to improve health and care. We prefer to do that with shorter distances than having 2 meters between everyone. We're living in a different world. However, the ability to connect, join up, link, learn remained undimmed, and that's what we're doing through ABCchat. So hopefully over the next half an hour, we'll get a bit of learning, a bit of connection, and maybe even a tiny bit of fun as well. So we're going to run this through to 11:30. We've got a number of sections coming up. We would love you to get involved on Twitter. Hashtag is ABCchat, as you can see just there. ABCchat, please do get involved. We want to try and create as many connections as we can. And we're going to create connections in our sort of virtual studio, I suppose, as well. I'm delighted that we're joined this morning by Suzette Woodward. Hello, Suzette.
Oh, hi. Hi, Rich. How are you?
I'm very well, Suzette. Thanks so much for joining us for this experiment. Lovely to see you. Just to check, Suzette, in the rest of your house, do you have anything other than white? Is your whole house white, or is that just the motif you've gone for?
It's predominantly white and grey, you know, very modern.
Great, good. Suzette, thank you. And we're going to be hearing from you as we go through. Again, please do join in on Twitter at hashtag ABCchat. And what we're going to ask you to do first off, please, we're going to give you a number of questions. And the first question is actually just we want to salute all those working out in health and care, all those working in places which actually we, to some degree, have chosen not to be. We salute you. And what we'd like you to do at home, please, is quickly find a mad dash for the most ridiculous drinking receptacle you can find. And we're going to give a bit of a salute just with our ridiculous receptacles. And we'll start here. So just can we just bring up Twitter 1 second, just to have that question clear. So raising your receptacles in just one moment. Thank you very much for joining on Twitter. Please raise your receptacles. And what we'd like to do is take a selfie of your receptacle with you there, wherever you're joining us from. It might be your front room, it might be your bedroom, it might be a whole variety of settings. Thanks very much, Pete. So Suzette, can we come to you first? Do you have a ridiculous receptacle at hand?
I do. This is a mug, believe it or not.
Lovely. Okay. What's it got? That's not a mug. It's a sweet jar. Come on.
No, it's a mug. Look, it's got a handle and everything.
Look, we're not going to turn this into a epistemological discussion, but just because it's got a handle doesn't mean that it's a mug. So you don't even have anything to drink out of it. So I don't quite know.
Well, that's why it's ridiculous, because, you know, you can't really, the square thing. I can't drink with the square thing. I don't know why.
Suzette, thank you very much indeed. Well, I think so equally, here's my mug here. I've actually stolen this from my 7-year-old who wasn't particularly happy for me to steal it. So thank you, Sylvie. So it's not square, Suzette, but it does have the design feature that when you have a drink, you just poke yourself in the eyes. So please do. If you've got a ridiculous receptacle there, if you can raise it, and I think we'll just salute all those working in health and care, but also on those shop counters, street cleaners, care homes, everyone there working in environments which are not as pleasurable as they'd ideally be. Thank you very much for all you're doing. We salute you with our range of ridiculous mugs, and we hope you are doing so at home too. Thank you very much for that. Looking forward to seeing everyone's wholly impractical mugs. Why do we even keep these things in our houses? Well, I suppose for moments like this. Thank you. So we're going to move on, and sort of the next thing we'd like to do is, if you're anything like us, you're Your working environment, your job, your context is changing pretty quickly. There are things which we're learning very rapidly. So next question we'd like you to answer again on Twitter, please. That hashtag is ABCchat. Is what have you learned over the last week? So we'll just see that Twitter question in one moment when that's there. But what do you know now which you didn't know last week? And in particular, you get brownie points. ABCchat has brownie points. We're yet to work on a distribution mechanism for ABCchat brownie points, but we'll find a way. So what do you know now which you didn't know last week, and particularly brownie points for that information being relevant to others? Most likely that's probably about how you do video conferencing well, or it might be something far more profound. But what do you know now which you didn't know this time last week? Suzette, what do you know? What have you learned this week?
I might be behind the curve because people who are following us may already know of this, but in some of my searching to try and find some answers to what we're going through, I came across somebody called Jeanette Armstrong, the most astonishing woman who gave us on YouTube and various other places stories from the Okanagan Valley and the most beautiful talk about human relationships and the community, and in respect of the land, and in respect of creating that community that can function incredibly well. I was moved to tears by watching what she said. So I didn't know about her last week, and I now know about her now, and that's amazing.
Suzette, that's lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Can you put a link on Twitter?
I will.
That sounds like a lovely thing to have there. Suzette, thank you very much indeed. And we hope that you there at home are thinking about what you've learned over the last week. What's really stuck out for you? And again, please put that on Twitter. Hashtag is ABCchat. And there's a bit of a challenge here that we are ABC, we are apart but connected. We are looking to make connections where they weren't there before. So for everyone tuning in, what we'd like you to do by the end of our show today, by past, is actually just to reach out to someone over Twitter who you don't know as yet. Of course, reach out to people you do know as well, but reach out to someone you don't know as yet. That might be just replying to their tweet. It might be retweeting it. It might be sending them a quick DM. But if there's a bit of learning, a bit of experience which is being shared, which you'd like us to make contact with, please do. Connections are more than possible to be made digitally, but possibly we do have to work a little hard at doing so. So a challenge there for everyone. Again, distribution of ABCchat brownie points will come at a later date. Thanks to all those already sharing over Twitter. Next section. Next section is, I suppose if this was a more formal event, we'd probably call it, this is time for our presentation. This is not time for our presentation, this is time for a story. And so unsurprisingly, and this will have different levels of relevance depending on how old a child you are, this section is called Jackanory, where we invite our special guest to tell us a story which is not about COVID. ABC partly is anything but COVID. We get a huge amount of COVID chat in our lives. It's nice to have a bit of a space where we don't talk about that just for a couple of minutes. So a story not about COVID, but of course with relevance to our current situation. And Suzette, it's lovely to have you with us, and you're going to tell us today's story. Suzette.
Yeah, so I've been working in the NHS for over 40 years, but weirdly, I've been saying that actually my career started in 2014. That sounds really weird, doesn't it? But why did it start in 2014? Because that was, we just started Sign Up to Safety campaign I was leading. And it was really only at that time that I started to realize that all that wisdom that I'd kind of gathered and created, and the experience and the expertise suddenly landed in my head. And I felt like I really understood more about what I was trying to achieve. But the big epiphany for me came when I was asked to do a talk on something called Safety 2. And at the time, not much was known about it. And so I thought, oh, shoot, I'm supposed to be an expert on patient safety. Massive, really quick load of research, and came across all this work around Safety 2 and a guy called Eric Holnagel. And I did my presentation. I clumsily kind of went through it, did the theory, the concepts, but it wasn't here. I didn't feel it. I just kind of delivered it. And then I had the absolute most utter privilege of meeting Eric Holnagel and hearing him speak and hearing others talk about safety too. And all of a sudden, I just thought, okay, now I can live it. I can feel it. It's in my soul, and it totally and utterly reframed everything I thought about in relation to safety. It's changed my perspective. It changed my career. It changed it for the positive. It is a massively amazing positive way at looking at safety. It is relevant to our day at the moment, because it is very much about saying, what can we learn about how we're doing this amazingly well, and then understanding occasionally it might fail, and truly understanding that sometimes is out of our control. There's a lot of robust research ever since then that's been used to back that up. But also, I think what people are doing now is, I think they're doing safety 2 every single minute of every single day at the moment, because the very crux and the heart of safety 2 is you've got to adapt and adjust to the circumstances and the situations that you face. And you do that to your very best ability, with all the support that you can around you, all the love that you can have around you, the joy and the way in which you can do that, knowing that you are doing the very best you can given what you've got. So they're doing it, they don't even know they're doing it. And so what I'm trying to do is raise awareness of that, because I think that what they'll realize is what an amazing way of looking at safety that is. So that's my story.
Suzette, thank you very much indeed. Lovely story. So what we're going to ask you, Suzette, beautiful, succinct, not about COVID, but relevance to a couple of questions bubbling to me, which we'll come to in a moment. But before we do, again, what we'd like to ask you back at home, our next question, which we'll post in just one moment, is just listening to Suzette's very brief story. What resonated for you? What did it get you thinking about? It might be about safety. It might be about something about reframing perspectives. But what really resonated for you? So we'll just have that question will pop up on Twitter. So again, we are using Twitter as our way of interacting. So you can set up a Twitter account in about 43 seconds. So if you're watching, you haven't done so yet, there's still time. You can still join in, hashtag ABCchat. But what resonated for you from Suze's introduction? And thanks to all those coming through with points. Suze, I'll start if that's okay, and then we'll draw on some of what's resonating for everyone as we go through. So Suze, well, two things. Firstly, can you sum up safety 2 in a nutshell? And that nutshell, I mean about 31 seconds.
So predominantly everything that we do, around about very, very roughly 10% of it fails, 90% of it succeeds. So what we do currently today is we spend all of our time focusing on the 10% that fails without understanding why it normally works, the 90%. What we actually have to do is study both, understand why it normally works, and then why did it fail in this instance? Completely different looking and a reframe of safety.
Okay, lovely, good. That was 32.5. I'm sorry, Suze. We're going to take that again. No, it's live, damn. Thank you. So there's people, again, question for you. What resonated for you? What about safety 2 is sort of particularly linking to your experiences, both now and previous? But Suze, there's something which really resonated for me there about how your work on safety largely involved or sort of a big part involved that reframing from something which is always going wrong. So safety always being a failure to actually something which you celebrate.
Yeah.
And I think, I imagine people at the moment are struggling a bit with how you celebrate success at a time of real pressure, at a time of real sadness and loss. Is there learning we can take from safety 2 about how people can still celebrate, can still share stories of success in a way which is sensitive and completely cognizant of the wider pressures?
Yeah. So there's a really lovely thing you can do. I call it Take 5. So at the end of your shift or the end of your session or the end of your day, whatever it might be, gather around, given social distancing, but gather around and ask each other, just take 5 minutes to ask 5 questions, which are, what did we learn today that we want to share for the next shift? What did we learn today that we would want to do tomorrow? What did we learn today that we did okay, and even pretty bloody amazing? And what do we want to do differently as a result of all of that? Just take 5 minutes to ask 5 questions and you'll learn from that. And then if you do that at the beginning of the next shift, the end, and you kind of top and tail, you get this lovely flow of knowledge about what we're all learning every single day, because that's what we are trying to do.
Suzette, lovely. And those questions we will hasten to put on Twitter as soon as we can. But to just come back on that, I think whether you're working sort of clinically, whether you're on the so-called front line of our response, or if you're in a role which is just affected by COVID, I think everyone's feeling under pressure. And questions about sort of learning and taking 5, I can imagine that there might be 1 or 2 people saying, yeah, that's great, but I've only got 1. I don't even have 1. I've got 30 seconds. What would be your advice about how you still carve out space for learning, even in a really high pressure environment?
I think what I would say is trust it. Trust the fact that actually spending 5 minutes to take that time, that breather, that looking around at your colleagues and saying, God, I spent this whole really sometimes horrible day with these people. We had tricky times, we had good times, but connecting with the people around you in a different way that isn't rushing from one thing to the other and demanding and doing all of those things. Believe me, it makes a difference. I've seen it work. I've seen it work in other industries. I've seen it work in healthcare. That small connection before you go home, that breather, before you get in your car or your bike or whatever you're doing, because otherwise your head is still there and full of perhaps stress, strain, and all of those other things, when you could have had 5 minutes where you could just at least talk a little bit about it. And then hopefully, if you keep doing that, it kind of gets it into a normal habit of you being able to connect, distill the information and share something before you go home. I just think it makes a big difference. And it is a lovely way of valuing people. And it's not a meaningless thank you. It's not just a let's all just go, thanks, that was lovely. It's got to be meaningful and genuine. And it's got to feel like you connected with these people, even though you may not work with them for some time, because that's what we do. Unfortunately, in healthcare, it's lots of different people all the different time. So it is that small amount of time, and that doing that in the morning as well, connecting you, grounding you to the beginning of that day, also helps to simply do things like knowing who's who and what their names are.
Suze, thanks so much. Is there, if you wanted to praise one particular organisation, team, area which you've seen do this really well? If you wanted to single out one for particular,
I think my heart goes out at the moment just because it's my old haunt, the Evelina Children's Hospital. I just think I know from friends and colleagues that it's always busy, always stressed, but they are doing their damnedest to do all sorts of reconfigurations, and I know that they're also going to be looking after adults. And when I was a PICU nurse, the thought of looking after adults would have terrified me. So my heart goes out to them. So the Evelina Children's Hospital.
Lovely. Always open for plugs for previous employers here on ABC. And for those of you, who don't know PICU, Suze, just in terms of avoiding
Pediatric Intensive Care Unit.
Pediatric Intensive Care Unit. So Suze, really interesting, and thanks again for people sharing what resonates to them on Twitter. Please continue to do so. ABCchat. Suze, you've had this fantastic career. So you used to work in pediatric intensive care. When we asked you on today, you could have told any story about any point of your career. Why did you particularly single out that one in terms of how you rethought about safety?
Because it utterly changed the way I think about safety in almost a minute. I studied it. I say almost a minute. I studied it. I thought it through. I looked at all the concepts and theories. But hearing Eric Holnagel speak about it and bringing it to life, I immediately connected all that theory, all that stuff, to real how we could actually do this really differently. And I just sat there. I almost felt flummoxed and totally and utterly overjoyed at the same time. So sort of, and whatever that is. And I just, so that overwhelming feeling that we should have been doing something differently, could be doing something differently, but wow, have we got something we could do differently.
Susan, thank you very much indeed. Again, thanks very much for people sharing what's resonated. Last one from me, Sue. So there's again a point there about dealing with a complete change in mindset. I think that's probably something we can all relate to, and can have quite a significant effect on our own well-being. Susan, we've talked about how sort of the place for learning and taking a breather and thinking about sort of how you can improve for the next day. Is there something here too about sort of taking care of yourself and those around you?
I mean, at the very heart of Sign Up to Safety, and we had a large number of really lovely infographics and stuff, was caring for people that care. So for us, in order to work safely, you have to be cared for yourself. So the health and well-being, dealing with fatigue, hunger, all of those things that people will be challenged with today and tomorrow and the next few months, was so incredibly important. It was the very heart of safety for me. It isn't about instant reporting systems or instant investigations or anything like that. The very heart of safety is to care for the people that care. The one quick point I would make is, though, that even though this is a massive reframe for a lot of people, it is about building on the past. It's not about ignoring your ancestors, and it's not about ignoring the previous world's work. It's about saying thank you. You did a massive amount of work, but we think that we could do slightly differently and reframe it. But it's building on what you've done. It's not just completely shoving you to one side. And I think that's really important. To always recognize the legacy that you're building on.
Okay, and there's again something there to just about having that chance to reflect and think about what sort of what's in your past, which connects to circumstances now, even if I don't think any of us were quite expecting to be where we are today, not very long ago. So this sort of very big shift in circumstance. Having that moment to reflect and think about what you can draw on sounds like a really useful place to start.
Yeah.
Sue, thank you very much. Anything? So some people on the call will have heard about Sign Up to Safety before. Some people will be hearing about it for the first time. If people want to find out more, Suzette, where's the place to go? Can they contact you to talk further?
Yeah, I mean the main place is via my Twitter at Suzette Woodward, or on my blog www.suzettewoodward.org, and I will post both of those on Twitter. I'm really, really happy to be contacted, connected, and enlightened. This is all about us being curious and learning together, and forming those relationships that help us all do that. So I'd be delighted if people wanted to join that conversation with me. That would be lovely.
Great stuff. Suzette, thank you very much indeed. And thank you for being our inaugural guest on ABCchat. I'm sure you felt exceptionally well briefed by us ahead of today, and you knew exactly what you were going to let yourself in for. Suzette, thank you very much indeed. We're fast approaching the end of our time. What we'd like to do next couple of minutes is think about the people. Well, it follows on actually very nicely, Suzette, from our discussion, almost like it was planned. But think about the people in our context who have helped us over the last week. And so what we're going to do is just give a chance to think about who do you want to give a standing ovation to? Who's sort of helped you out? It might be personally, it might be professionally, but this is a time when we need the support of others as much as we possibly can. So who would you like to give a standing ovation to for what they've done over the last week? We would like to share that on Twitter if at all you can. That would be lovely. But even if not, questions just there. Even if not, just to spend a moment thinking about that, And you could even think about whether you've let that person know and use this time just to drop them a quick message to say thanks. Each week we're going to particularly talk about an organisation we'd like to give a standing ovation to, and we will talk about that in one moment. But Suze, over to you first. Who'd you like to give a standing ovation to this week?
Well, I mentioned them earlier, so they're going to be double mentioned. How lovely is that? The Evelina Children's Hospital, and all my mates, my friends, my colleagues, and my little nursing heart still belongs there. So I'm giving you a standing ovation.
Suzette, thank you very much indeed. And if you're joining us and haven't quite worked out that Suzette used to work at the Evelina Children's Hospital, probably she'll plug it at least a couple of times in the remaining couple of minutes we've got. Suzette, thank you very much. We hope everyone's thinking where they are. Who would you like to give a standing ovation to this week? As I said, we would like to single out an organisation each week which we think is doing a cracking job. And that organisation for us today is an organisation local to us in South East London. It's a Lumberjack Cafe, part of an employment charity doing fantastic work around young people employment. As a cafe, it's rather had a hit to its business model of late. You might have noticed that with cafes you've tried to enter into, but it sort of reinvented itself in this wonderful way by enabling its customers to buy meals, fantastic meals at Lumberjack Cafe for staff at King's Hospital, which is not far down the road. And so it's a standing ovation both to Lumberjack Cafe for a lovely idea and a nice reinvention of a business model in a tricky time. But equally, all of those customers, I think they're getting 50, 60 people buying lunch for NHS staff at King's every day. So it's a big sort of standing ovation to them. So hopefully people are putting on theirs on Twitter. So if you are, I think wherever you are, we would actually like you to stand now, including you, Suzette, stand please. And we will just say thank you very much indeed with standing ovation to all those who have sort of helped us out over the last week. Hope you're doing that. There's a physical activity element to this as well, standing up. Thank you to Lumberjack. Yeah, we're going to transition into a Zumba class. But thank you. We hope you've managed to take that time. Suzette, you can sit down again now. I could sit down, but it wouldn't leave you with much to look at, which for you might be a good thing. So thank you to all those who have done that. And I think just to close as we come towards 11:30, to say that that reaching out, that saying thanks to others who have helped us, but also just to give ourselves a moment to appreciate the thanks which others pass on. I think it's a really key part of us all coming together with apart but connected over these testing weeks and months. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you again, Suzette, for being a first guest. Pleasure to have you. We'll be back next Thursday, 11 o'clock. We're running this as a pilot series of 3 episodes. So there'll be an evaluation form on Twitter in just one moment where we would really like your responses, what you liked, what you didn't like, what we can do differently. We're going to be sort of learning very quickly as we go. So we'd really welcome your feedback. We hope you enjoyed this morning. We hope it helped you connect in this difficult time. And we very much hope to see you next week. If you want more about us as Kaleidoscope, the website is kaleidoscopehealth.org.uk. You can find out more about us if you'd like to. Have a great week, everyone. Look after yourselves. Look after those you're around. And we'll see you next Thursday at 11 o'clock. Thanks very much, everyone. See you then.
Bye, guys.